Hi everybody, good morning. So I'm Kim Searle and I run DarnIt workshops. So I do creative workshops based in West Yorkshire, mainly around Huddersfield, Leeds and that kind of area. But I also travel all the way across the country, including going down to Loughborough next week, South Devon, Herefordshire and everywhere in between, as well as doing lovely online sessions like this one with the Royal Voluntary Service. So I always love doing the virtual village hall. So today I'm going to be showing you how to do a load of different upcycled garden decorations. So we've got 3 different projects and I'll show you loads of different ways to change them up. So what I'll do firstly is I just wanted to pop on and say hi on camera. So now I will turn my camera around so you can see what my hands are doing. So just give me one moment. Sometimes it takes a second to switch over. There we go. So you get a nice view of my plants for a moment. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is turning some tin cans into some lovely little tea light decorations. So it's things like this, where when you put a tea light in, it looks gorgeous. So you can do it on all different kinds of cans. And the best thing is, it's something that you'll probably have in the house after you've done like a big stew or something anyway. So this is one where I spray painted it first, but as you can see, quite a lot of it has been knocked away by the hammering. So I'd always recommend generally doing all of the hammering first, and then you can like spray paint it afterwards. And that's just with a kind of normal spray paint. And just a bit of a health and safety disclaimer. Any kind of spray paint stuff you're doing, I would always recommend doing outside and wearing a mask because it's so bad for your lungs. And you can do it like this kind of thing where you do a pattern, or you can do it freeform with all sorts of bits and bobs. I've seen quite a lot of nice ones where people have like decoupaged on top of them as well. But I do tend to find I'm always a bit worried about that because with it being paper, if it catches fire, it can be a little bit tricky, obviously. So another bit of a health and safety disclaimer there. So all sorts of stuff you can do. And you can do this where you get a tin can and you literally just hammer into it. But the problem then is that it dents the can and changes the shape completely. So what I'd recommend doing is filling a can full of water, popping it in the freezer overnight, and then you can bash it. And so this one, I hate to say, I've been away for the weekend, so I put this in on Friday, and I didn't realise until this morning that my freezer had completely crushed the can, which in some ways is quite good because it gives me a really nice flat surface to work on and I can always change the shape afterwards. But when I first saw it this morning, I was a bit shocked. So I did put another tin can in straight away. And unfortunately, I went to get it out a second ago and it had completely not frozen. It was still water, which I assumed might happen. But having it filled with water just changes the density. So rather than as you hammer into it, it denting the can, it keeps the structure. But I'd recommend getting like a plastic container like this, getting a towel and wedging it in there so it's not rolling all over the place, and so that you're not getting water all over, because after a while it will start to crush this into like crushed ice. Also as well, I can always see the comments, so please do feel free to ask any questions, and I've got it up on my laptop next to me so I can keep an eye on it. So if you want to, you can always do a template like this. So a few of the dots here are a little bit too close together, so I wouldn't go any closer together than this kind of thing. Another, I know I keep giving you health and safety disclaimers, but it does obviously make the inside of it a little bit sharp afterwards, so do just be careful with that. You can always kind of get a hammer to it afterwards and kind of flatten them out a little bit, but I always find it's a little bit more work than necessary, really. You can also do it where you get one of those big kind of leather hole punches and do each one individually, but when you get down to the bottom, it's really tricky. So can kind of line it up. So if I take this out of here and wrap my kind of starry template around it and work out where the edges of the can are, then I can kind of wedge it in there. So actually this being flat works really nicely. And you can use different kind of nails to get different effects. So like on this one, I've got bigger ones and smaller ones, so that if I get a light, you can sort of see them coming through a little bit. So I've always thought it would be really nice to do like constellations with it. Oh, good morning, Irene. Thank you so much for tuning in. So you can always wear gloves to do this as well if you like. And this is the other good thing about having a towel here, is that your hands aren't going to get kind of iced onto it. And just hold it really well. I tend to use a little stubby hammer like this. So these are from Wilko's. I think they're under £3. And they're brilliant because with them being shorter and having quite a big head to them, it means that you've got a lot more control and you're less likely to bash your fingers. So just one good tap And I always like to check the first one to make sure it's gone through. And there you can see it has gone through pretty nicely. Now, of course, I'm not going to be able to line that up again, but that is okay. And you can do it in all sorts of different patterns. And I tend to find my holes get a little bit bigger as I go because I get a little bit more confident with it. And if you're not feeling so confident with hammering things, you can always get a pair of pliers. And these are cutting pliers, so they might not work so well. And kind of hold it like that so you've got a bit of distance from it. And you will find as you go along, it will really change the kind of how easy it is to hammer. Because at the start, when that ice is really, really solid, it's going to be a bit harder to hammer into. But as it starts to melt a little bit, oh, of course, I'm going to hit my thumb in this, then it just gets that little bit easier to work with. So as you get around to the corner bits, sometimes best to go over them again just to make sure they've all come through. Oh, morning, Jane. Thank you so much for tuning in. So where is everyone watching from today? I always love to know that, because I know there's a really good wide audience on this. And what else have you been enjoying on the channel recently? So I'm always amazed by the range of things. It's brilliant. So it sometimes takes a little while to do. And I do find I tend to start with just one tap, and then after a while, you can kind of change it to what works best for you. So lots of little small taps can sometimes help. Oh, hi, Carol in Ferndown. Oh, I think it's Ferndown kind of Hampshire way. I think my parents live near you. There's a, if I'm thinking of the same place, there's a really lovely fabric shop near you. So you sometimes find if you're doing a template, you take it off afterwards and realise that you've missed loads of it. I always think that's okay because it's quite a forgiving craft and it's kind of meant to look a little bit rustic. Oh, it's Dorset, not Hampshire. It's one of those border ones. Well, not border ones, but my parents are in the New Forest, so I always forget what's Hampshire and what's Dorset. It's quite fun to do this as well. I love any craft that involves a hammer. But I would recommend as well, I say this about a lot of my workshops, as you're doing this, make sure to roll your shoulders every so often, because you do find you kind of hunch up quite a lot. And I don't know about you, but I know a lot of crafters get quite a lot of shoulder problems. And anytime I go for a massage, they're like, oh God, you've got a lot of knots. And it's stuff like this. So because I did a lot of my dots on here a bit too close, I'm kind of just using them as a bit of a guideline. And you don't have to draw the dots. You can always just draw a shape and then do kind of wherever you think the dots should be afterwards. And you can make it really complicated as well. You don't have to just do something like a star. So I'm going to do the star in the bigger nail and then get somewhere I had a little nail. There we go. And I'm going to do that to do all of these kind of rays coming off it. Oh, we've got someone watching to learn English. Oh, that's fab. Thank you so much. That's really cool. And Sue's watching from a very soggy Cornwall. Oh, Cornwall is always beautiful or soggy. There never seems to be an in-between. This is the problem. When you're using a smaller hammer, it is a little bit harder to do. In fact, I might freehand this bit so you can see where I'm going a bit more and that I can check that these are going through. So a few bits of my star down here have gone a little bit wrong, and you can always do this to you can draw on the actual tin can of where you want to do all of your patterns, but I do tend to find it will leave marks, and even once you try and clean it off, like obviously if you're going to spray paint it, it's all good, but it does tend to be tricky. Often when you get to the top as well, it's really hard because that's where there'll be a bit less water. If I show you what it's looking like in here now, you can see it's starting to crack a little bit, but not loads. And of course, you can just do random dots all over the place as well. It doesn't have to be this well planned. Oh, Sue says it will be sunny in Cornwall again in a minute. I can imagine. I'm going down to Devon next week. And it's very much the same. You get all seasons in one day, but it is absolutely beautiful. It's a lovely end of the country to be in. So you can always kind of move it around, which is obviously tricky with this one, with it being a bit flatter. And when you're not using a template, it is a bit harder because it is slippery. But you could use any sort of cans as well. Like I was looking earlier at some like decorative tin cans I've got as well, like flat ones with patterns on, and thinking, oh, that would be fun to do. And you can change the kind of depth that you do them at as well. So you could always do it where you just do a tiny pinpoint like that, or something kind of, if you hit it a lot harder, it will have a lot more light coming out of it. Sorry, I was just checking the comments because my laptop went dark for a moment. So you can do something like that where it's sort of planned. I know mine hasn't gone the best, but that happens sometimes. And I always think if it's one like this, I'm sure if you do anything like this with cans, you know that it is a pest to get every single little bit off. But after it's been in the freezer and defrosted, once all of the water starts to come out, that does tend to naturally help this come away, and as you hammer it as well. So I don't tend to give them a soup. I'll give them a clean, obviously, but I don't scrub them before doing this. I tend to scrub them a bit more afterwards if I'm changing them into anything. But you can obviously do it like this, where you are just going all over the place with all sorts of different patterns. So has anyone got a beautiful sunny day today? So I've got a lovely view out over kind of towards Marsden Moor. It's actually looking quite nice today. And then what I would always do, this is a tricky bit because there's never much water at the top, especially when it's done this kind of thing. But I would do some really good holes at the side. There we go, like that. That was easier than I expected. And these look absolutely gorgeous in an evening full of tea lights just hanging from trees and stuff. And I don't know about everyone else, but I've spent a lot of last year, well, a lot of this year as well, really. We've had fire pits in the garden. It's getting to that kind of season again at the moment. So they look lovely when you've got loads of them about, just hanging all over the garden. So then to create this kind of top bit for it, get just a bit of wire, so quite a sturdy bit. Oh, Worcestershire is sunny. That's good to know. It's a nice change because Saturday was truly grim. I was working in Ilkley and then drove down to London. Just the whole way, it was just torrential rain. So you loop it through and then wrap it round like this. Has anyone been working on any crafty things later? I always find this time of year is really good for kind of like cozy crafts. And is anyone working on any Christmas present crafts? And same on the other side. And Karen is watching from sunny North Wales. Lovely. So with the end bits, I'd always just make sure to kind of wrap them around as much as possible so that they kind of sit flat and you don't have that kind of pointy bit there. And you can always use like garden twine as well, but I do find this does last a little bit longer. It's quite nice as well if you leave them out in the garden and they go a little bit rusty. It's actually quite lovely because you just get, they age over time and they start looking really nice and rustic. So I'm going to see if I can change the shape of this. I might not be able to because there's so much ice still in it. But if this happens and you end up getting something that's a bit flat, probably not. It might be something that I have to wait to do until it's completely dry. But you can always as well, if you do want them to look truly rustic, Right, I'll put that to one side so it can dry out and I can hopefully show you what it looks like in the end. You can always kind of give it a little bit of a bash. So I'm just going to get my laptop awake again so I can see all comments. And Sue's been sewing Christmas gift bags. That's ace. For wine mainly, that's awesome. And you can use kind of different hammers for this bit. Like if you use a kind of ballpoint hammer, you get quite nice kind of little dappled effects. And you have to do it quite a lot to start to see effects come through. And especially when you've got a tea light in and it's flickering and it picks up all of those different textures. Yeah, so you can do all sorts of that and you can really play with it. And like I was saying earlier, if you want to, you can try and smooth out the middle, but that would be better with a thinner hammer. So that is our first craft. So I'll pop this one out of the way in a bucket and then hopefully it will have melted a little bit by the end. And I can show you what it's going to look like. And the next one we're going to do is one of my favourite, just nice, colourful ones. And so this is one where I found I do a lot of festivals over the summer. So I tend to put these all around my tent because I do workshops at festivals. So I've done only 3 this year, but normally I do about 6 of them. And 2 of them were just very little festivals this year. And they're just so cheerful. So I found I tend to put them around my tent, but you can put them on a string as well and hang them up around your garden, or you can hang them from trees. And they're just nice and colourful and easy to do. And you can do them from t-shirt yarn. So I had a bit of a extravagance recently where I bought a ridiculous amount of t-shirt yarn in lots and lots of gorgeous colours. But what I'll do is I'll show you how to make your own as well. So that if you don't have a massive box full of t-shirt yarn in your living room taking up a lot of space at the moment, then you can do your own. What I'll do is move the camera up a bit so that you can see a bit better. So you get a t-shirt. So I'm just using like a tiny kids t-shirt at the moment, so I can show you a little bit quicker. And what you need is a t-shirt that's got a lot of stretch to it. So if you pull it like this and you can see bits of elastic coming out, then you don't want to use it. But best thing is one with holes in, one with stains on, you can use, because you can just pick and choose which bits you're going to do. So you fold it over with this kind of underlap bit and flatten them out as much as you possibly can. And then you cut the seam off if there's a seam at the bottom. And then cut little increments. Actually, let's do this properly. I had a ruler ready for this. There we go. This is what happens when I go away for the weekend. I come back and like, where have I put everything? So we're going to do them every 3 centimetres. And to start with, just mark it off. And I would always do this with scissors. I've had people ask me before if it would work with a rotary cutter. And I always think rotary cutters are like actually quite dangerous. I used to work in a fabric shop, and the amount of times we'd have people come in with rotary cutter related injuries was just a bit terrifying. And because it's quite stretchy and it moves a lot, I definitely wouldn't recommend a rotary cutter for this. So once you've marked it all out, and you can always do it at 2 centimetres if you want it to be a really thin yarn, or a little bit wider if you want it to be really, really chunky. So then I'm going to cut up to the top. So we're not going all the way through, it's just going over that line just there. So has anyone watching made your own t-shirt yarn before? Oh, and I should say as well, so this t-shirt is one that doesn't have a print on. But if you're using one with a print, then if it's one where like the print is embedded in the fabric and it's part of the fabric, then this will work perfectly. But if it's one where it's got kind of a plasticky kind of print on top, where when you like run your finger along, you can kind of feel the difference between it, then that will stop it curling up properly. So you can still use it, I just wouldn't use the bit with the print on. I love this technique. It's so satisfying to do. I was doing a rag rugging workshop on Saturday morning and showed some people quickly how to do this because I had loads of bits of t-shirt yarn floating around. I always think it's just such a nice thing to chop through as well. It's really satisfying to do. And local charity shops at the moment, it's probably slowed down a bit now, but after the pandemic, there was they were getting so many donations, and the price of rags wasn't as good as it has been in the past. So if they were getting things like marathon t-shirts and stuff like that, they can't really sell on. They weren't getting that much for rags. So a lot of places were kind of looking to get rid of a lot of t-shirts that they couldn't sell. So then you get this connected bit. It's always the bit that confuses people. So to start with, we're going to go kind of from the fold bit to that first cut. So we're going diagonally across. So like that sort of thing. And then you just keep going diagonal from cut to cut. Always hard to do this kind of thing on camera because I'm checking that I'm still on screen rather than looking. In fact, if I sit down, that'll be easier because I know I'm in shot now. So you keep doing that. So t-shirts that don't have a seam on the side are the best for this because then you just get a nice continuous yarn. But you can still work with stuff like this as well. And the t-shirt yarn I've got pre-made is from a company called Hooked. So it's Hooked but with 3 O's, and they are based in, I believe it's Spain, and it's all from factory waste, so it's still upcycled and lovely. So you end up with a really long strip of t-shirt yarn rather than having lots of small bits. And then when you get to the end, you just cut to the middle of there again. So then what you do is pull it and release it, and then you can wrap it around your hands. In fact, let's zoom in a little bit more again now. There we go. So pull, release, and wrap it around, and you keep doing that. And it's really important that you release it, because if you pull it and wrap it around your hand, if you don't use it for a while, then the bit in the middle, the stretch will be gone. And it sometimes ends up a little bit crinkly in the middle. Oh, Carol says that's clever, isn't it? It's so good. It's just such a good way to very quickly get yourself some lovely t-shirt yarn. I'm sure everyone has got t-shirts sat around their house that they don't use. I mean, I've got a lot because I often get people phoning me from like local universities and stuff saying, we've got a load of promotional t-shirts that are going to end up in landfill. Would you like them? Oh, America, I'm glad the subtitles are helping. I love that they do automatic subtitles now. So there's one here that I've not cut through all the way. There we go. I should have said as well, with these, you can always, rather than using them as tea light holders, you could just put plants in them, have little hanging plants. Obviously, they would rust over time, but it's just another option. So then, got loads of t-shirt yarn that you can use. So then for making the actual tassels, what we're going to do is you can do it with one colour or loads. I always think loads of colours is really good, actually. Why am I doing that? Best to grab it from the middle like that. So I'm going to use a bit of each of these. I don't know why I grabbed a green t-shirt, because I was going to go for really nice bright colours. The green doesn't particularly go with them. Sue says you could crochet a mat with that, and definitely the all of this t-shirt yarn I bought, they sent me a really gorgeous book of crochet and knitting patterns. And America says that in their country they name this technique trapillo. That's awesome. So the nice thing with these is I can literally pull them like that, And then let's move them out of the way a bit. So then you decide how long you want it to be, because you can have like long tassels, or you could have really short tassels, and you can have kind of a mixture of all as well. So you work out what length you want it to be, and then you fold it over, and you keep doing that until it kind of gets to the chunky thickness that you want it to be at. Oh, I've got some that have gone a little bit rogue. Sort that out, sorry about this. So fold it back and forth, kind of holding on to the ends, and then you want to make sure when you finish on the side that you started on, so you've got all of the ends together. And then if you shuffle that out the way, so then you're going to get one little piece, so sort of that kind of length, and that's going to go through the side that's all loops. So you want to try and make sure they stay in the same place. You pop that through there and then tie them in a knot. And then we're going to shuffle the knot so it's hidden inside those loops. And then we're going to grab another piece. About, let's go for, as we've got a ruler here, go for about 50 centimeters. And you could do this with like scraps of fabric as well, or I keep meaning to do it with leftover bits of wool and just have some really chunky little ones. But I just love how colourful and cheerful t-shirt yarn is. So we're going to do a gathering knot, which if anyone has done macrame, you might have seen it before. So you have a short piece and a long piece, and the short piece goes on top, and then where you want the gathering knot to finish, so the gathering knot is this bit here that just holds it all together. You just kind of pinch all of your cords together or make a bit of a fist around them. And then you're going to, I tend to try and do it because with t-shirt yarn you've got a folded bit and a flat bit or a rounded bit. So I try and make sure the folded bit is inside. And then you're going to wrap up towards this loop. And you want to do it so you pull it really, really tightly so it holds them all together. And you don't want to get tighter or looser, you just want it to be really consistent, and you want your wraps to kind of sit next to each other like this rather than sitting on top of each other. So I've seen a lot of people do kind of this sort of thing, and then it doesn't work as well. So you want to wrap like that, and then you put your tail through that loop just there, and then you get the end bit here and pull this down so that it goes into there, and then pull this tight a little bit so there's no slack around there, and then pull it until that knot is kind of halfway through there so it's protected, and then that will keep that all together really, really nicely. So then you can trim this bit down here. You can always put a bit of fabric glue on it if you want to be sure, but I've never found that it undoes itself particularly. And then with the bits at the bottom, if they're all really even, you could just kind of trim through the loops, but because the long bits are a bit, there's a few bits that are longer, just trim through them all so they're the same kind of length. And I tend to save these bits for other crafts. And then got a lovely tassel. So I'll do one more of those, just mainly so that you can see this bit again, but just one in some different colours. But yeah, they're just always so cheerful. So if I do another one with my homemade stuff as well. So what we'll do is we'll do this as just a one colour one. So with a one colour one, obviously it takes a little bit longer to build it up. You need to fold it backwards and forwards a little bit more, and this is what I mean about the seams being a little bit tricky. But if you've got a seamless t-shirt, it works really well. Just trying to work out the best way to do this. So what I might do is cut the seams off it. What I'll do it is I'll do them the same length as the seams. I'll try to. maybe not. It's always the tricky bit. I'll do it a little bit chunkier than that. Okay, cut that bit off. Now I always think it's a good idea to do a different colour on the kind of oh no, I ended up with those two on the opposite ends. That's all right. So you get the loopy end. Pop this through. Tie a knot. The nice thing with it, because it's got a bit of a stretch, when you tie a knot, it tends to end up really, really secure because it just tightens itself together. And if you've got labels in it, you can always chop them out. So 50 centimetres extra. And then you've got a long piece and a short piece. Pop it in front of here. Make a fist around it. Wrap around it. So you're pulling it really tight to start and then working your way up. Making sure it doesn't get looser or tighter, just stays the same. And then you go through that loop, pull the end so it drags that down, pull that bit so there's no slack up here, and then pull it down a little bit. So you're not pulling it all the way out the bottom, you're just pulling it so that that knot gets lost in the middle and is kind of protected. And then trim these bits off. Trim down the bottom. So I always tend to do it as long as the shortest loop. Then you've got another little tassel. So get rid of that bit. Actually, now if I cut that off, that's all going to come off. So you can hide that in the middle. So you can do them in loads of different ways. And then if you wanted to join them all together, the way I'd recommend it, so if you wanted it as kind of like a nice long garland, you get a long piece of t-shirt yarn, or you could use something like this kind of sisal cord or something like that. And then you just go through each one, just do a little knot so that they're not all kind of bobbling about all over the place. And then just keep going along like that. And then that could hang up nicely along kind of like a fence or a wall or something. It would just be one that I would make sure to bring inside in soggier weather. But you could always put it kind of like underneath a big umbrella or underneath a sunshade or something like that, and it would look lovely. So does anyone want any of those bits repeating? Would anyone like to see a gathering knot again? Or are we all good for now? Always like to double check. So I know the gathering knot is one of those things that just sometimes flummoxes people a little bit. Actually, let's do a gathering knot on. So I won't do a whole extra tassel. I'll do another one underneath here, just so it's nice and clear. So folding the folded side inwards, having a long bit, pinch it all together. And you can always do it a lot longer as well. So I've been doing quite short ones, but you could do it where it starts much further down. And wrapping it around this way. keep it nice and tight. When you do this with macrame, if you're using cotton cord, you don't see as many bubbles, but when you do t-shirt yarn, you can really see if the consistency changes. So then you go up through there, pull the bottom bit down, pull that to keep it tight, pull it down a bit more, so you can sort of see it wobbling along there. So now that knot's in there, and then you just trim those off. The best thing is, if you do it and it doesn't look right, you can always pull it off like that and keep going. Oh, sorry about that, just hitting my camera. So if you did want to do that in scrap fabric, you just cut, so sort of about 3 centimeters, 1 inch-ish. So with this, you wouldn't want to kind of wrap them round so much. You want to keep them a little bit flatter. So rather than wrapping them around something, you would just fold them back on themselves like that. If I get another one as well. And you could do it with loads of different fabrics, or again, just with the one. And I'm using bits that I've just chopped out of a bigger piece of fabric, but it does work really nicely with just scraps as well. So you can kind of intersperse them a little bit. I've got to do that one a little bit shorter. So is anyone making any of this at the same time, or are people watching for ideas? And fold that back. And then I would, rather than using fabric to do the gathering knot, I would again do it with t-shirt yarn. Oh mate, I realised I hadn't put all of the loops together. And you do need kind of a central loop point so you can thread it through really easily. So you find the middle bit, so it is a little bit fiddlier. Do your knot. And again, you can make these really, really tall or really short. And then extra piece for a gathering knot. And then exact same thing, but when you crunch it up, it's just a little bit fiddlier. So rather than pinching it, it's sometimes easier with this to use the actual gathering to bring it all together. And go through that bit, pull that down and hide it in the middle. So it does look a lot more rustic, but again, it's just a nice way to use up scraps, especially if you don't have t-shirt yarn or any t-shirts that you want to crunch up. And you can always tidy up any bits, like if there's little square bits like that. And I always tend to ruffle it about a little bit just to check that there's nothing missing in the middle. Yeah, so just again, completely different way of doing it. So the last thing I'm going to show you is some Raggy Bunting. So for this, I would use some kind of like, you can use anything that's kind of a pretty strong cord. So something like this, it's sisal or sisal. I never know what the right term is. Oh, someone, who said that? Carol said you could use pinking shears, and that's a really nice idea. just checking if there was some in the drawer next to me, but no, there's not. But yeah, that with pinking shears would look really, really lovely, especially on the bottom. But yeah, with this, again, you can use t-shirt yarn for this. So for t-shirt yarn, you could use all of your little end bits to build it up into something. But I always think if you've done a load of these, then you want something a little bit different. So with this, sort of like this, we're going to use strips of fabric. So you can either do it where you get something like this and cut it into strips, or you can literally just use scraps of fabric. So I've got a big box of scraps behind me. And with this, you always want to make them longer than you expect. So if you want them to hang that sort of length, then you need a good kind of extra, like 20-25 centimeters on it. So you get your strips, and then you get the middle point. And again, this is kind of a macrame thing if you've ever done macrame before. So you put a loop behind it and then you bring the tails through. So this is called a lark's head knot. And then pull it tight, and that just secures it on there really, really nicely. And I always think with this, it works really well if you use loads and loads of different textures. And things that are quite silky that drape really well are really nice for this. So I've got all sorts next to me. And you can truly with this, because the point of it is it looks a bit raggedy, you can use end bits like this. And nothing has to be the same length, like obviously cut off any bits like that. But once it's all hanging together, you don't see all of these like seam bits. So you're more going for the kind of the texture, the sheen of things. And just build it up. And I always tend to really squash them together. And this always looks, again, if you go camping, it's a really nice thing to put on the front of a tent. I've got some velvet here, and this is going to look gorgeous. So again, you want things that aren't going to fray all that much. And again, like Carol said earlier with the tassels, you could use pinking shears for this for an even wilder look. So if you're going to use anything that would fray a lot, then definitely use pinking shears. But stuff like this, like the cotton here, will fray over time, but it won't fray dramatically. And if you fold something over like this, you can get loads of scraps out of it at the same time. So has anyone got, I know we're into autumn now, but has anyone got any kind of end of the sort of slightly warmer weather plans? Are you making the most of your gardens and getting them ready for winter at the moment? So you can do it where you have the same things and they repeat, or you can just do it all over the place with all sorts of bits and bobs. So if any of you, like me, made endless masks last year, you might have some nice fabrics left over from that. So it's a good way to use that. So this was fabric from a load of teal masks that I made. And I always tend to find that I kind of, if I'm doing this and doing loads of it, I'll do a load of chopping. Oh no, those haven't got folded. I didn't realise that. I'll do a load of chopping and then a load of this. And it's quite a nice one to kind of do in front of the TV in an evening. Just going to grab some more scraps. And you can truly use bits that you'd never use for anything else. Like I've got a really horrible pillow cushion here that I used for, I did some turmeric dyeing a while ago, and I had loads more dye than I needed. So I was just like, oh, I'll just grab this horrible pillowcase that I don't even know why I have it. Every so often I get given a bag of just random fabrics, and this was probably in one of them. So stuff like this, like whenever I look at it, I'm a bit like, oh, it's grim. But on something like this, when it's just in strips, it looks so much nicer. And with stuff like turmeric dyeing as well, it fades over time a bit, so you get a kind of natural progression. And if anyone ends up doing any of this at home, I would absolutely love to see some photos. So this is one of those processes that takes quite a long time to build up. But once it does, it looks lovely. So just grabbing more fabric from behind me. And I'm sure a lot of you are like me, where you just have loads of random bits of fabric around the house. And things like old scarves work really nicely for this as well. And I always find I've sometimes got fabrics that I don't really know what I can do with, like things that are sequined or like things that are quite lycra based. I don't do a lot of projects that I can use them for, but stuff like that works brilliantly for this. And here, like sometimes you'll put some things on and you'll be like, oh no, those together, like these two are just a bit too pale together. The best thing is you can always just shuffle it along, pop another bit on, and keep going. It's a good way to use up your fabric stash if you have a giant fabric stash that you don't really know what to do about. So I'll do a bit more of that in a moment, but let's have a look at the tin can from the start. I'll just shuffle some of these bits out of the way. So just trying to work out where I put it, because I put it out the way so I wouldn't end up with water everywhere. There it is. So it's starting to melt a little bit. So at this stage, it's always quite satisfying when it gets to the point where you just get ice flying out of it. So it might take a while before I can get it back to the right shape. But you can always, every so often, kind of try and get a bit more ice out. Not quite getting there yet. There's still a long way to go with the melting. But we'll look at that again right before the end. This is also a really good one to do with like old bed sheets and stuff. And you could always even do it if you wanted, where you dyed them. If you had like a load of plain bed sheets, you can dye them some really interesting colours. And that doesn't have to be chemical dye. You could always do it with natural dye as well. So like turmeric will get you really interesting colours. Avocado pips will. Onions give you a gorgeous colour. I should say actually avocados kind of come out a dusty pink. They're absolutely beautiful. And for this bit actually you can use a rotary cutter. If you had a big surface that you could lay it out on, you could cut loads of strips at once. Oh, Catherine says putting a can in warm water would melt the ice, and that is true, but that would mean dashing to grab some warm water right now. But yes, if you're doing that at home, you can definitely do that. So you can always do loads of piles of different colours and then kind of pick from each one as you go. And I do a lot of rag rubbing, so I always have raggy bits around anyway. And it's just nice to have another use for them. And you could do it with old clothes as well, like pattern shirts work really well for this. If you do t-shirt yarn but then don't stretch it, you get a kind of nice effect for this as well. What other fabrics have we got hiding back there? It's the best thing, you can just put all the colours together. And again, this is a nice cozy craft. Don't know why, fabricy things in my head are always nice autumnal cozy crafts. I've got a lot of rag rugging and macrame coming up. Next weekend I'm doing craft weekend in Herefordshire, near the South Wales border, and I will be camping and doing loads of macrame over the weekend. It's always such a nice time. They don't even have to be the same length. You can use random bits like that. If you put it on and you think, no, that's not right, you can take it off. So just trying to find where I put another bit of this, because I'm sure I had a little stack of them. If not, I can always grab a bit more. I know this one is very much already fraying, but might as well pop it on. And I always think when you get loads of this, it looks really nice because it kind of bows a little bit. And if you put it against something, it's just, oh, it's very satisfying. It's one of those things where you see it quite a lot for weddings. I used to work at a wedding stationer's, and we did a few little photo shoots with things like this. That's why the rest of this fabric is on my lap. Let's add in a bit of this. And this is just, I think, kind of 70s, 80s bed sheet. It's just great because I've used it for years for screen printing, for rag rugging, for all sorts. And it's just such a lovely print and it just keeps going. I always think everyone has such a different fabric stash as well. So I did one of these once where I went into a space where we've got like shared materials, and just looking at theirs and using random bits from that was so much more fun than using my own. It's just always really interesting to look at other people's bits and bobs. So does anyone else have a big fabric stash at home that you're thinking, what am I going to do with all of this? And now you've got some ideas. Sorry, just ending up absolutely covered in fabric at the moment. Need a bigger table to work on. always wanted to do this as well with little bits of wool. So I always end up with so many little bits that I don't know what to do with. So between this and Tassels, at some point need to try all of that. So you can see how that would very, very quickly build up. So there's all sorts of different types of fabric. And then I would recommend something like this. So some kind of thicker than garden twine. So kind of something like one of these two works really, really well. But something where it's not going to absorb too much water. And when you hang it on something, it's going to have kind of like a bit of structural integrity about it. So that it holds on really well. Because I found when I've done this on garden twine, it's just looked a little bit kind of, I don't know, a bit floppy and moves all over the place. Whereas this kind of holds it together a little bit more. So just going to check on this again. So again, very much not melted, but that's okay. Should have thought to get some warm water before, but actually by this point of the workshop, it probably would have been cold. So with this, once it's done, I would always just give it a really, really good wash with some soap and water, because that should help get these bits off, especially now that they've had a really good soak like that. Like you can even just start to pull it off, but it is that point where there's the gluey bit where it just makes it a bit of a nightmare. So just give it a really, really good scrub. And then if you want to spray paint it, I would make sure it's completely 100% dry before you do. Spray paint from quite a distance, so from about here. Like I always think I never show people how to do spray paint on camera because it is something that you need to do outside and preferably wearing a mask. So I'd always do it from this distance, and if I make the noise, which sounds really, really daft, you just kind of turn it around, go ch 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 ch, and it will look really, really patchy at the start, but you just keep turning it around, keep doing it, and I would definitely let it dry in between and kind of come back to it and then do another layer. And because I find when people go shh, it just ends up really, really clumpy and quite messy, and you don't get what you want is that kind of nice, smooth, matte texture from it rather than it being like lumpy sections. It's just from a distance, really good fine spray, but you don't have to spray paint it. Obviously, you can just leave it like this, and yeah, then pop your tea light in and it's good to go. And let's give this one more little go. Oh, thank you so much, Carol. That's really, really lovely of you. Just, yeah, it definitely needs to be a little bit. I think this one is going to end up being a slightly strange shaped one anyway. But with it being a tin can, once all of the ice is out of it, I can definitely kind of reshape it with my hands as well. And you can always, while there's ice in there as well, unfortunately the ice isn't on the point, but if you manage to do it while the ice was still filling the can, if you tap this down, it does sometimes, not always, flatten these out a little bit, but it is still tricky to do. And I think that is absolutely everything, unless anyone has any questions. So thank you so much for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it, and we would love to see photos of any of these things that you make. And I'd love to see your takes on it as well, because everyone always ends up with really lovely creative things. And like I said, please do make sure that if you're doing this, if you need to, you're using pliers to do all of the hammering. Careful not to hit your thumbs. Always, when you're hammering at the start, have a towel in there so that it's well secured. And yeah, have a lovely day, everyone. Thank you so much. Take care of yourselves, and hope to see you in another one of these soon. Bye, everyone.